Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have with me a returning guest for the third time, CM Quinn. How are you doing today?
I am good. Just woke up and ready to crack on with my day.
I said today, I should have said this morning for you over there. People
Yeah,
don't remember, we're in different time zones, so.
it's 9:15 in the morning on Saturday for me at the moment.
I think I got 9:14 on Friday. I do like it though because it is helpful, especially in the winter where I don't have to go anywhere. It's nice to have people to talk to on a Friday night after my wife goes to bed. With being pregnant, sometimes she can't make it to 9, so it's kind of nice to get to talk to writers. Usually around here, it's like people are, oh no, I'm putting my own kids to bed or something. So you can always find someone in Australia to talk to about writing on a Friday night. So Friday and Saturday night, so it feels good. We'll get right in there with that first question. What have you been up to since our last interview? I think it was
I'm trying to
January
think.
or February.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it was
definitely been a
February.
crazy few months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I finally got around to finishing the edits for the Queen of Blood and Fury, so book 2 in my fantasy
Oh, perfect.
series. Um, Had some unexpected hiccups with that, which I didn't really see coming. My formatter actually ghosted me about a week and a half out from release.
Wow.
And unfortunately, because it was so close to release, I couldn't push back the release date.
Oh,
So I had to, at very short notice, learn how to format and do all of that myself in about
oh,
48
wow.
hours.
Whoa,
Um,
wow.
which was a stressful experience to say the least.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I had to go away like about 2 days later, so I didn't actually have time to see the print copy of
Mm.
the formatting that I've done. I just kind of had to I looked at the file, I was like, yep, looks good, I'm happy. And I was like, well, I can't delay it, I can't release. So I put it out into the world, and 6 weeks later, and yeah, here I am. Finally got a proof copy, so or a
Oh, wow, that looks
print
amazing.
copy. So yeah, it came out really well. There
Yeah.
were, I think, one issue with this one is I made the font a little on the smaller side and a couple of other little things, so it kind of threw out
Mm.
my page count, which then in turn threw out the actual cover image itself. So it looks a little similar, but I had quickly fixed that. I just increased the font size, and then it matched the original file that I had. So it looks now all centered. But I just
Oh,
have
that's
this one
cool.
copy that's kind of yeah, but I was super stoked. Like I'd never done formatting before. I was like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
did a thing.
yeah. I definitely know that feeling. I gotta say,
Like,
I still love the cover. It looks absolutely amazing, especially in paperback. So,
yeah, it definitely yeah, like it definitely came out
oh,
really
that's
nice.
cool. Yeah,
Um,
it looks great.
I'd never done it before, so I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I had a program, Atticus, that I was intending to use to start using a Sapphic fantasy series that's coming out later at some point. I just didn't anticipate using the program earlier, but here we are. And
Kind of got your feet wet a little bit there, and there and that. I
yeah,
always wonder
I
what that
don't.
like.
Yeah, I don't think I anticipated being thrown in the deep end. 4 or 5 days out of an expected work trip. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm formatting a book. And luckily, I had all the typo corrections from the proof copy, so I was able to just jump onto my Word document and I was able to make corrections, like the typo corrections myself. So that was, thank God, I made a lovely little spreadsheet for my formatter
Hmm.
that I didn't end up using. So you live and learn, and it's just been an experience, and I've just been coming.
Yeah.
I've only been back about 2 weeks now, so I've kind of just been getting my feet wet a bit with editing again. and just getting back into marketing, but it's a whole
Oh yeah, yeah.
experience.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I had met Latrell on when it's gonna be a future episode, and he was just got done with his first science fiction novel, and he said the same thing. He's like, get done the end of the interview, and we are just discussing, how with indie authors in particular, always it's just so much work, right? You think you're done writing the book, and then you're done editing the book, and the book's ready, but then if you're gonna actually do indie, it's like you gotta do all the other stuff too, and it's like the many hats that you have to wear. It ends up being a lot. So we discussed that quite a bit. But it sounds like you had that experience tenfold with having to be thrust into the formatting, and things like that, and short time frames too, right? So yeah, that's a lot.
I think the only slightly frustrating part now is because I'm very particular with all the books matching. So now I'm
Mm.
going back through book one, and I didn't have a table with book one that I'd given to my formatter because we'd done it over a dozen or so emails of typo corrections and
Gotcha.
stuff. So now I'm going through my old proof copy, which is riddled with typos. Like, it's not the version that's currently for sale.
Mm.
Um, riddled with typos and little like formatting quirks and stuff. So I'm being able to go back through that and making all the corrections and drawing that up
Yeah.
onto a table. It's definitely a really interesting moment of seeing how much my writing style has just even changed over the past 12 months. Like,
Yeah.
not to the
Yeah.
point where it's a completely authorable, but just skill wise, I can see a
Mm.
difference, which made
Yeah.
me feel really good. A little bit cringe at times. I'm like, why did I write this?
Definitely understand the cringe.
So
That I do think that that
it's
that
just,
is interesting that you bring up though, with the difference. I always ask people about that because to me that just it's almost like you're, multiple writers, right? And I remember R.A. Salvatore, the first book I read of his, I was like, oh, okay, like this is really good. But then when I went back and actually read his first book, I was like, oh wow, I was like, this was totally different than, his first
yeah,
actual book is totally different than one I actually read. I think the one I read, he was already like 14 years in or something. So, he was pretty much master of his craft by then. So it was really interesting. So that to me has always been, interesting for growth development. So yeah, I think that'd be really interesting to, see book one versus book two. But oh, my Gmail, I don't know why my Gmail keeps closing here. So for number two there, so current projects, so still formatting a little bit. And then you said, you're fixing the formatting, sorry, for book one. Um,
yeah.
I'm just curious, in terms of how are you setting up your spreadsheet then? You mentioned that in the spreadsheet a couple times. Are you setting it up for like by chapters and then trying to find like
So
spelling, and then typos like separately, or like how'd you kind of set that up?
so the way the way I set it up with book two, actually was a godsend. So it was basically just a Word document. I ended up just doing it in Word because it was just I prefer functioning Word.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so in one column,
That's smart.
I would have the row. I would have like the chapter, the page, of like where the fault was.
Mm.
The middle column would be what the like an excerpt, including where that dodgy bit of sentence
Oh, that's
was,
yeah,
um, or what the typo was. And then in the third one, I would include the correction. Now, I would not just, in that middle column, I wouldn't just include the one misspelt word, because that can be a real prick to try and search on a Word
yeah, for
document.
sure. Yeah,
So I would include like a quarter of that sentence, because then I would search it and it would take me straight to it. So it saved me, scrolling through a document trying to find it, because, there might be 3 or 4 pages between an error, or there might be half a page. But this means I
yeah,
keep track, and then I can actually tick off as I go and be like, yeah, I've done this one, this one, this one. And it just means it's a little bit more logical, and it just means I don't forget anything. So I highly recommend that as a little technique when it comes to that like final
yeah, yeah.
edit for when you're doing your print copies.
Yeah, that's super smart. It's
So
funny. I just was curious because a lot of people have mentioned that recently when I listened to other podcasts, but no one's actually talked about like how they actually set it up. So to me, that's really interesting. I think that's a really smart way to do it, especially not just putting. One of my friends put just one word. He's like, "Oh, I misspelled this word." So I try to look it up. He's like, "It's popping up 450 times." He goes, "Apparently, I use this phrase a lot." I'm like, "Well, it's lessons learned, right? Make things easier for
yeah,
yourself,
like
not
if you
harder." But
put in even partial of the sentence, when you go to look for it in your Word document or whatever program you use, it takes you straight there, and then
yeah,
you can just do your corrections and then just move on. And it works so well.
yeah, I'm definitely
Like
definitely
I had
stealing that.
designed it, yeah, like I had designed that for ease for my formatter, and now that they're off doing God knows what, I'm now taking advantage and using it myself, which it works. It worked
Yeah.
really quickly, and it meant that I was able to get through like 150 other corrections
Oh wow.
within a matter of hours instead of
Oh
like
wow.
painstakingly read it and not miss one because I can get a bit tired and skim through.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's smart for anybody really to use, in terms of formatting, like even to give before, because I don't know, you know, a lot about, how what the prices are for formatting and stuff for everybody, but I do know a few people who, have, paid certain formatters recently, and I had one friend that said, if I had done a better job, myself, it would have cost less,
Yeah,
obviously if you're editing your book better, you're paying less for the editor. Um, for audience. So, I just thought that was interesting. I was like, I never considered that for formatting, and I said it makes sense, you just, I feel like I just wasn't really thinking about. I was thinking more of an editing standpoint, but I think that makes a lot of sense with how you did it. I think that's actually what I'm going to do. After he mentioned it, I was like, that's a really good idea. So I think
yeah.
that sounds like a brilliant plan. We'll give you credit though. We'll call it the Quinn method. So, something cool like that. We'll come up
Um,
with something catchy. So.
yeah. And like it does get easier with formatting now. I'm certainly a lot more comfortable with it than I was like
Mm.
that first mad dash. Atticus is a really good program if no one has an Apple computer. I've got Apple, I think the equivalent is
Mm.
um and then I just went onto Etsy and I found an artist I really liked, and I bought a bundle of like little images and stuff that I'm gonna be using
Oh,
as like
cool.
scene breaks and chapter headers. I think the
Hmm.
commercial license for that bundle, I got like nearly 100 images or 60 to
Oh, wow.
100 images. I think that cost me, trying to think, it cost me about 200 Australian, which I think was about 150 something US. My conversion might be off, but I think that's ballpark.
Yeah, it's
So
roughly
that just
that.
means
Yeah.
I can, yeah. So I'll be doing that for the Girl of Ash and Snow, and I'll be doing it
Hmm.
for my Sapphire project once
Hmm.
that decides that it's ready. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, that's really cool. That's also a really good strategy. We were just talking about doing that. Oh, trying to remember. I'm trying. You remember what? I had a few interviews the last couple of weeks, and now it breezed by. So I'm totally blanking on which female author I was just discussing this with her. In terms of doing the same thing for her book, and I hadn't considered going on Etsy for that, and she had mentioned that, so we had talked about that in our interview. So I have that as a note, um,
Yeah.
to look up for this weekend, because she was explaining that to me, I was like, oh, I just never considered doing that before. So
Yeah.
I think that also is a really good tip and really really smart, because I found a lot of really good stuff on there. Probably too much, but I think that's a really good resource. It's funny to see how far Etsy's come, within the last, I think when I first got it was like 14 years ago, something like that, like right out of college. But it's interesting to see all the different things that have popped up there now. So yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's definitely been a godsend for finding like commercial licensing for images, because I was
Mm.
like, where do all these formatters find their images? Like, where are they sourcing
Yeah,
them from? And
yeah, yeah.
I was just trawling through the internet trying to find
That's
it.
hard.
And yeah, I came across Etsy and I was like, those images are perfect. That's what I need. And I was like, oh, that's not too expensive. Like, that's really cheap. And then
Yeah.
I got chatting with the artist, and they were like, oh, that's for just like personal use. Here's the commercial cost. And I was like, well, yes, I'm paying that. But no, they were amazing. And I absolutely love the products that I've got from them as well. So I'm excited. I've got a number of images that I've got in mind for the reformatting of the Gale of Ash and Snow. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, that's super cool. Oh,
Fingers
that's awesome.
crossed.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I don't think that most people, myself included, would have thought of that. So I think that's really smart. I like when people think smarter and not harder and do it better than I did. So, or somebody I know. So yeah, I think that was really smart. This is my favorite question, of course, per usual. I know the audience is tired of me saying this for everybody, but I always love hearing about people's books and then be able to spread that. That's why we do the podcast, my buddy and I. So for number 3, can you tell us what your book, The Queen of Blood and Fury, is about? Amazing title, by the way.
Thank you. So the Queen of Blood and Fury is a direct sequel of the Gale of Ash and Snow. It takes up probably not even half an hour after the events of book 1. So it's a very like quick. There's no huge time skip jump. And it follows our protagonists as they find themselves embroiled in a bit of a city siege, and demonic enemies kind of rising up from the shadows, and old enemies, reappearing. So you've got a clash of multiple realms and worlds in this one city, and it's all kind of coming to a head, and you get a bit more of a hint in what's to come for the next few books as well. But this is definitely much more of a high stakes, high action, fantasy kind of just all out city siege, which I had so much fun writing.
I do remember. So some people, audience, if you've listened to us, since the beginning, you might be like, "Wow, that sounds really familiar." Well, we have had CM Quinn on in the past, so I do just want to insert here, that she's been on twice with us in the past. So make sure you go back and take a look at our first interview for book 1, and then she did mention some of these things for book 2. So it's really cool for me, to have somebody that's been on from really like beginning till now, where book 2's been released. So I think that's awesome. I still think that your book cover for book 2, I just love the red, first of all, and the title I think is amazing. I still really enjoy just the image just itself. I was actually just looking on Kindle last night when I was flipping through, and I still think it just looks amazing. So I think that still, from when we talked from interview 2, I still think that was just a brilliant choice on your part. I still really like where I was putting things together for TikTok and stuff for us for this. So I just thought it was just so cool when I had the images on one document side by side for book 1 and 2, and they just look really, really good side by side. So I don't know. I always like, and we talked about this before, I always like when people, match their covers somewhat, where you can tell it's the same author and series, or, and things like that. And I think that personally, from a marketing standpoint, if, you look at your book 1 and 2, I think that really does a really good job of that. So I don't know. I think it really shows the common theme. You got something, obviously it's different, because it's book 2, but a lot of the same. I think it's really that premise, right? Like you're promising a lot of the same things, right? With the characters, the interactions and things like that, maybe setting, but you're still giving somebody a new story. And I think your covers really match that type of advertising, and what it is. So I think it's really hard to do book 1 and book 2 for a lot of people, particularly from the cover standpoint. But I thought you did a really good job with that. So really excited. I actually just got done. We're getting done with our book club books, so we're starting to go through indie books now. So I was like so excited. So we got book 1 for you coming up really soon. So just got to get through Malazan, Book of the Fallen, the last one, Crippled God. I was telling my buddy, I was like, I need to be done. I'm like, it's been a great journey, but I was like, I need a palate cleanser. So we got I think we have you and We got 9 other indies. We got trying to get for February. She wrote, try and get ahead a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Yeah, but my friend said that he was like, oh my gosh. He goes, he's like a child. He can't just look at your first book and be like, okay, we're gonna read that one. He of course had to look at this next book, and he's like, oh my gosh, that cover. I'm like, I know. I was like, don't get ahead and read the back. I'm like, you're not there yet. So we had a couple books get spoiled that way. So trying to learn from our mistakes. But I was
Yeah,
just
well,
curious. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I won't reveal the image, but I may or may not have book three's cover and title already locked in. And I may already have the book. I have the book title. I haven't actually finished the
Oh,
draft
that's
yet.
cool. Oh, that's really cool.
But when I tell you, like, absolute chills when I got this cover, like, I got so excited because it's a different color theme as well.
Oh,
So each
wow.
of the books obviously will have a slightly different color theme. So
Yeah.
when I do have stock available for this book, when people do order it, instead of being sealed with a gold seal, book two will be sealed with a red black seal. And I won't say what. Look, book three might be a blue or a green color.
Mm.
There might be some more interesting little details on the cover, but that is certainly some months away before I give a little peeks to that cover as well. But
Yeah. Oh,
and
that's
also,
cool.
to finish the draft. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Mibbler, the cover company that I use, is freaking incredible. Like, they nailed the brief
Yeah.
both times, and with
Yep.
this third one, they just so good. I got so excited when I saw it, and I was like, I really want them to do book four's cover as well,
Mm.
but I have to restrain myself. So I don't have a lot of restraint.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, it's funny that you
So
mentioned that because so my buddy, he's my tech guy, right? So I think I mentioned that to people on here before. So, he's really been helping me. So we went through the 10 different companies, like bigger companies, for indie authors for covers. But I actually had shown him both of, your books and in this series. And I said, well, these were done by this company. And he said the same thing I did. He was like, okay, sold. He goes, we're going to go with that one. And I'm like, are you
yeah.
sure? And I was trying to show him a couple others. He goes, no, we're going to go with that one. And I'm like, okay. I said, that's also what I felt. And ever since our second interview, it's funny because, I have several other people on that I just absolutely like adore their covers. And, I don't look them up ahead of time because I want them in the interview to also tell me so I could, kind of do some research myself on what I like and don't like, in the market. And they said the same thing though. So we've talked about that, him and me, the last several weeks. We're like, yep, sold. But one of the first ones was definitely, yours, your two covers. So it's funny that, three or four, I can't remember, 3 or 4 other authors, the same thing happened. So we just had that conversation actually this past Sunday for book club. We're like, yeah, going with that company. So I'm so happy that you're so happy, with your covers and with book three. So that makes me feel really good. So yeah, that's super
Well,
cool.
I mean, so for my Sapphic series that I've got coming out, the book cover I actually got that was actually a pre-made. And I was kind of humming and hawing whether I went with the pre-made, and it only just happened that I was scrolling through and they had the perfect cover, and I was like, it's fate. It has to be fate.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I'm excited to release that one either December as well, but that might be a New Year release. It's just going to depend on. They've been very busy with work, so I haven't been able to get through the last edits, as quickly as I would have liked. But we'll see how that goes. Publishing is not a quick process, and I really wish it was. I really wish I could be like, yep, the book's ready to go. I can get 20 copies to my website in 2 days, but unfortunately, it certainly takes a little bit. So I would love to, but like, I really want to get stock on my website for the Queen of Blood and Fury, but I'm still waiting on one more copy come from Amazon, and then if that looks good, then I'll put in a bulk order. But we'll see. hopefully get stuff in time at the end of December. I feel so bad because like the only place at the moment that I can get it that people can buy it is Amazon, because I haven't even had chance to get it loaded with Ingram Sparks. Like it's just I'm like, thank you to my readers for their support and loyalty for else that is my life right now.
That in a nutshell is literally has been my entire summer till now. Because like we're trying to match people up with, you know, release dates for their podcasts with this and that, you know, it just was such a mess because people, you know, had it just everybody had everything all over, you know. We had editors, we had, you know, got COVID or had something happen, you know, or whatever. And, you know, cover artists, same things. I mean, it was just like it was a madhouse. I told people, I'm like, in the future, really sorry, I said, but for the rest of this season, I was like, I have to get ahead from when my baby comes. I was like, so I'm trying to, you know, do enough and, you know, keep, you know, everybody, trying to push everything forward for people, as much as possible. I was like, I guess what in the future was have to try and, you know, just assign people, you know, first come, first serve, and then this is your date kind of thing. It was such a mess. I had to try to unravel it all. So I can only imagine, you know, it's just, I was like, oh my gosh, these aren't even my books, and I'm stressed for all these authors. Like, I just, you know, it was, and, you know, people are calling me, oh, I'm so sorry. So I'm like, it's not your fault. I'm like, you just, you know, you're waiting on a product. We're trying to do a thing. And my buddy goes, yeah, I don't think this quite worked. I said, well, we tried, you know, but I'm like, that just goes to show you, you know, how the market has been, you know. And it's funny how, you know, I feel like it was definitely obviously affected by COVID, but I still feel like a lot of people would think it's just back to normal, and it's really not. So it's an interesting thing to have to keep thinking about. So
I just want it to be back into a normal kind of pace again. I'm hoping in the next week or so that my work schedule will abruptly ease off. Hopefully should get some final assessments done with work in the next couple of days, which means once that's done, I can go back to writing, I can go back to editing.
Oh, awesome.
One of them times out really well. I pretty much finish an assessment, and if I pass it and it goes really well, I pretty much get to throw myself completely into NaNoWriting month, which I won't finish a book in a month, but I definitely should get hopefully Act 2 of book 3. Cool. I was about to say the title, but of book 3 sorted. I just had to make sure that my camera wasn't. I've got my whiteboard next to me, and it's got like the title massive handwritten on it with like all the plot notes for part 3, like part 2, and I'm like, ooh, I just need to just like tilt the camera over here.
Yeah, I say don't do that, because then my tech guy's gonna be mad at me, because the editing he'd have to do. Stop being friends with me. It's like when I messed up somebody's name a while back before YouTube allowed you to splice. Oh my gosh, we had to like run it through one program. I don't even know, he magically did it, but he was like, that took 3.5 hours. He's like, can you just ask people how to say their names from now on? I'm like, I promise you I will. And I have ever since. But yeah, that's really funny. I know all about that though. I keep thinking, when are we gonna get back to normal? My writing schedule has definitely not, but the last couple of weeks I've tried to figure that out. So I'm hoping by next week I can get back on more of a, you know, normal type of schedule. I'm glad that, you know, NaNoWriMo is next month, like we talked about before I start recording. I think that'll help me get back to some sort of semblance of a schedule. But
yeah, I'm hoping that'll be the thing that I need to keep me back in the gear, because I haven't had time to do any drafting. And this may make some readers cry a little, but I haven't done any drafting and really any editing, like heavy editing, since about June. So it's been a very busy, very crazy time with work, and I haven't had the time to sit down. Like, even when I've had the time, my brain is like, no, you need to be studying, you need to be doing this, this, and this. You know, you need to focus on this. So I haven't had any time, which is, I'm telling myself it's still going to get released next year. But it is going to be a very big book. I'm probably expecting over 200,000 to 250,000 words for that.
Oh wow.
So I kind of want to manage a little bit of expectations with it
Mm.
might not be ready by Christmas next year. I would love for it to be ready by Christmas next year, but it's going to take me probably at least 4 or 5 months at minimum. A very busy writing to get it done. But
Yeah, yeah.
whilst book 3 might not release next year, my sapphic fantasy should, book 2 of that one should also release next year. So
Oh, cool.
I'm busy. I've got a lot of projects. I think if I manage it, I will try and get 3 books out next year.
Oh, wow.
We'll
I
see
feel
how
like
that
that's pretty
goes.
close to
I
what your
feel like
goal
I've got
was,
a little
though.
bit of,
Yeah, I feel like that was pretty close to what
yeah.
your goal was for interview
I
too.
kind of wanted, yeah. So I'm well behind on the drafting count for that. So I think the next 6 months is just going to be an insane amount of writing. Um, and probably more than 1 or 2 nano writing month kind of challenges. So my poor brain's probably going to get very burned out, but I really want to get book 3 done. There's a lot of really exciting stuff that I've been like wanting to write for like 2.5, 3 years now. Like I've had
Oh,
these
wow.
particular scenes in my head for so long, and I'm like, yes, now I get to write them. I've done all this build
Yeah.
up, and I get to write lots and lots of chaos, which is what I'm loving at the moment. So
Oh, that's awesome. Do love me some chaos. Uh, so you kind of mentioned this earlier, so I'm really interested in this. So you mentioned, the difference in writing book 1 and 2, and then a little bit between 2 and 3. But what have you noticed that has changed about your sales from book 1 to book 2? Has your approach to sales changed at all from book 1 to book 2?
it has, in the sense that I'm beginning to learn a little bit more that in terms of marketing series, you tend to have to market one more.
Mm,
Even when you've got like a new release out for your series, like you'll do a bit of marketing for that, but it's really hard to market for like book 2 or book 3 in a series, because that doesn't really get readers in the, like, new readers in the door. If you've
yeah.
already got somebody that's potentially read book 1, they're going to read book 2. Like
Mm,
they're probably more likely to read book 2. So I'm now kind of reminding myself I need to go back to the drawing board and do much more heavy marketing to get people in the door for my series. But
mm,
it is hard because statistics do show that readers are more likely to pick up a series that's completed. So there's definitely that pressure to get a series completed, because
yeah, definitely
some
not
readers
me.
just won't pick up a book. Like they just won't pick up a series that's completed. And I'm guilty of that. I know that if I hear that I see an author's got like 3 books out, and then I'm like, oh, but the last book in the series comes out in 3 months. I'm like, I'm not buying all 3 books now. I'll read them in a week, and then I'm just gonna be in pain the next 2 months. Like, so I'm not trying to beat myself up too much with slow sales for that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get new readers in the door, and then hoping I keep them entertained enough in book 1 that they stick around for book 2, book 3, and eventually book 4. So
So,
I'm learning. Yeah, it's more focusing on book 1 sales at the moment, which really sucks. Like I haven't gotten any reviews, unfortunately, yet on book 2, which has been a
mm,
bit of a grind. But I'm getting now back into more marketing, so I'm hoping I'll start getting some more reviews coming in over the next few weeks, few months. So yeah, to anyone who does read my stuff, please, please, please review. It does help.
it really does. I had a couple people this summer who we did like we're in a couple of Facebook groups together, and I think Sean Crow actually helped start one of them on accident, but we did like a blitzkrieg. So anybody that read a particular indie author, I can't remember which group it was in now. It was fun though. Like I went and read some people, and then they're like, we're gonna read by this date, and then we're gonna blitzkrieg the reviews on this date. So then we all just read whoever's book, and then we went and reviewed it all at the same time. So some people went from like 25 reviews to like, like 75, like within just like, like a week or something like that. So I think actually I'm gonna have to try and get people to go back and start doing that again. But it was really fun, like I got some really good books, read some really good authors, and we blitzkrieged them. So it was really interesting. But it's funny that you mentioned that though, with series being done, because I'm so bad at this. And my buddy I was just with, he's just like, he goes, "You're so horrible. I will anytime I see something new, I'm like, ooh, shiny." And it doesn't matter, so bad. Um, and I'm like, "Oh, that looks good," and it's a book one, and I'm like, I think it's because I'm used to it from comic books though, because I went through so many back in the day, like Marvel and DC, they were great and everything, but like there were like when Invincible first came out, I was like, "Oh, this looks so cool," and to me, I was like, "Oh, I want something unique," so I really went and found a lot of unique you know, issues number one or something like that, or miniseries and stuff. So I think that's where my love of new comes in. If I see it's a number one, I'm like, yep, let's do it. So I think that's it's not good for my Kindle. Let's just say that much, because I got all these book ones everywhere. I'll read one and then I'll go to another one. Then I forget that they have a second one. So I'm glad Kindle's starting to, send the suggestions and stuff. And I linked up with Goodreads, so that's definitely helped. But yeah, that's funny. I'm definitely I'll read whoever, especially if the has a really good cover and blurb. But
I mean, my TBR is enormous right now, and I was like, oh God, I've got so much reading to do. I've got so much writing to do. I need to be writing and not reading that I want to read, because I just
yeah.
bought so many books over the past months, and I've just done no reading. I'm like, ooh, and I'm like the same as you. I'm like, ooh, shiny, new book, new pretty book.
Well,
Uh,
I don't. My wife goes, I don't know if buying you a Kindle was a good idea or a bad idea. 'Cause she goes, now you can get books for 99 cents, and she goes, too many authors, so when they go on sale, I buy it. And then, if I really like the book, then I'll go and buy the paperback, and then if I really like that, then I'll go buy the Audible. She's like, she goes, I think you spent more on books now than you did before we just bought paperbacks. Cause at least, you could only bring so many home in a bag or so many shelves and stuff.
yeah,
I was like, I'm trying not to go crazy, because I feel like the Kindle is like, I think of like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So I'm trying not to go, completely bankrupt, but it is really hard with, when it sends you suggestions, and I'm like, oh, that does look really cool. I've been trying to add things, make it like a game. I've been trying to add like 10 to my wish list before buying a new one, and then
yeah.
kind of going back through and stuff. So I've been trying to restrain myself. I think it's gonna be really hard once Christmas comes though, because that's how it was last year. And then on my phone, on the Kindle app, I had so many. I mean, it was crazy. People bought me like I had two $25 gift cards, and man, did I make that last. I probably bought like 100 books with that thing. So, and I found a
Yeah,
lot that were just like free and stuff. So
I just got I just had my birthday recently, so my sister actually got me an Amazon gift card, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like so excited. But I'm like, do I spend this on like two paperbacks because books in Australia aren't always the cheapest, or do I just like go absolutely ballistic with like 40 million Kindle books? And I was like, oh, my my TBR is just going to get even bigger. So I'm like, do I just get the
yeah,
paperback, and that way my TBR doesn't grow by like 40 books instead of like
yeah,
two?
yeah. Yeah. It's funny though that we have that problem now, where I feel like, 10 years ago it was like, I had an iPad from school, and they put the Kindle app on there for us, so that when we were with the little kids, we could buy stuff through school and stuff. Well, there were a bunch of, cheap books and stuff I just bought for myself on there, and but like, I think they were like David Dagliash like had just started writing at that time, or just publishing books. So he had like his half work series, and then I think his first one through Tor or Orbit just had just come out. But like, it was interesting because there really wasn't much on there that I wanted to read. I guess
Yeah,
now it's like almost, you know what I mean? And now it's like I'll find something every 5 seconds. And it's
yeah,
nice though, I think, it really goes to show, particularly with the indie market, like how great of a shift it's been, where now it's like you and I can't keep money in our pocket. Whereas before, it was really hard to get people to spend money on indie, particularly with, fantasy in general. So I just think it's interesting now, where it's like I can't even pick now with a $25 gift card, and that might be 25 books. So it's really interesting. I think it really goes to show, that it is hard to find your audience, but when you do, it's I think they're really loyal. So it's an interesting market now, but
Yeah, the market's definitely changed. Like I still remember being younger and just the pushback that when ebooks started to become a thing, when industry was like, ebooks are going to destroy the publishing industry, and
mm,
it was very doom and gloom when ebooks first
yeah,
kind of started to take on the market.
yeah,
And now that you kind of just expect that the publishing industry, for the most part, really seems to have taken it on and has embraced it as a medium. So
yeah,
yeah, there's so many platforms as well. I'm currently just Kindle exclusive. Whether I go broad down the track, I'm not quite sure at this stage. I like Kindle for the most part as an exclusive, so it's just easier to manage. I might go to like Kobo or something down the track when I want
mm,
to sort of break away from Amazon, but for now, I'm pretty happy with Amazon services, and we'll see how that goes in the future.
yeah. I just had a friend in a private group, and he was like, "Yeah, he like texted everybody because I knew for about a month he was gonna go from Kindle to wide, and he just like, but I didn't know when he was gonna do it, and then he just did it, and he like messaged us. He was like, I did it, I went wide," and he was like freaking out for about 3 weeks. His sales like decreased so much, and that it was just like a trickle, and then all of a sudden they went right back up again, and he did better. But then we had another friend in the same group where it was the opposite. So he's like, oh, I went back and did Kindle, and then it took him a while to get his Kindle sales back up again. So it still really is interesting to me to see who does well with that, who fluctuates. I do think it's still nice though as indie, which is why I keep referring to myself as indie, because I like having that ability to decide. I still think having that
Yeah.
ability to decide is just having control, I think, over your product is just far better for me. And we talked earlier, right? Where you have to do everything yourself. But at the end of the day, I really like that. I like how you did your books. I like how you did your covers. I like how you did your formatting. I think those, images in the book look fantastic. And a lot of those times, with traditional publishing, unless you're Brandon Sanderson or Patrick, they're not going to let you do those within your book. So
Yeah.
I just think, especially with Kickstarter too, you get a lot more autonomy.
Well, there's definitely not a guarantee with traditional publishing in the sense that you're going to get
That's
a cover that
yep,
you necessarily like as well. Um,
yep,
I've seen a few people traditionally published at the moment, and I've seen some that have just come out with absolutely gorgeous covers, and like
mm-hmm.
the publishing house did an amazing job. And then I've seen others where I'm like, it doesn't look great. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, like $200, and I'm like, did
Yep,
they do that on like Canva? I mean, don't get me, and even then, I'm bad saying that because I've seen some really good covers made on Canva.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I've seen some just average covers, and I'm just like, you've put in all this effort to grow your business and to grow your name, and you've got published, and that's the cover that they give you. Um, my heart just went out to them, and I could tell that they were
yeah,
a little disappointed with it. So yeah, it is a process. I think one option is unfortunately not necessarily better than the other. It just kind of some just work better for other people, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you kind of just have to fit through it and figure out where it all sits for you. So I lucked out with a really good cover company, which the only reason I even found them was because someone else in my Discord server who was publishing at the time, she had commissioned a cover through as well, and I really loved it. And I got it.
Mm.
I think I got a discount when I used them the first time because she'd referred me to them. So,
Oh, that's
like, if
cool.
anyone, yeah. So I think if you or anyone wants to use, like, to get, I think it's like 15% off.
Oh, okay.
I'll email the company, but like I'm pretty sure like just hit me up on social media and like you can use my name as a reference to get like 15% off. I think it's like the first order.
Oh, okay.
And then with Midler, really watch them around Christmas time as well, because they do a lot of sales around holiday periods. I think I got 20 or 25% off one of my covers
Oh,
because
wow.
I think it was actually book three's cover. They were doing a Christmas special. Like I hadn't even really started to write the book, but I was like, well, I might as well just order the cover now. I know what the title is. I know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
want on the cover. The reason I can't order the cover now. And yeah, I got it for $40 cheaper because I just did it in advance. So always
Oh,
keep an
wow.
eye
That's
out on
cool.
like companies like that, especially around holiday times, because you can get some really good deals for covers. Some
Oh, that's interesting.
always
I
us
haven't heard that.
indies can save a little bit more coin.
Yeah.
Yeah, Niblat does a lot of sales, so you kind of just watch their website because they'll
Mm.
usually do a lot of sales, particularly around Christmas.
Oh, that's cool. Sorry, my Gmail keeps doing this thing. It just keeps like disappearing on me. It's getting kind of crazy. So we did talk about number six. Cool. Oh, I'm sorry. So we did talk a little bit about differences for you for book one and book two. But have any of your writing habits themselves changed from book one to book two?
I think my process about how I tackle a book has definitely changed. I wrote book
Mm.
two in a very condensed amount of like a very condensed amount of time. I had the time to do so, but in terms of how I tackle like the book as a whole, I don't fully plan out a book. I don't think I'll ever be a full um, like planner in this like a full plotter and stuff. But I definitely tackle it. I break it down to acts because that's just how my books come out. And then in each act, I'll break down. Okay, what are the key events? Like, what is the arc of this part? What am I wanting to achieve? And then I'll break it down again in terms of what are the arcs for each of the individual like main point of views. Which so far is filling up my whiteboard. I had to buy a very big whiteboard for my office. Because like book three, for instance, has 3, 6, 8 point of views.
Oh, wow.
Whereas I think book one and two have 4 or 5. So there's like an extra few in book three. So I was like, hence why the word counts would be enormous. So I had to kind of plan out a little bit more in terms of just loose guidelines and loose like goals in mind for each. So that's kind of my writing style and sort of process has definitely changed in sort of how I tackle each book, which is why book two only took me say I think it was like 3.5 or 4 months to write in a
Wow.
very insane pace. But I definitely drafted that book in about 4 months, which
Oh,
for
wow.
170,000 words at draft, I was a little fried by the end, but I did it. And my editor and I definitely hacked away at it. So I think final word count's about 140,000 words. Yeah, I definitely had to kind of develop a bit more of a process and not wing the entire series as much as the way I winged book one a bit when I first did the draft, which is why like the first draft for book one was so bad, so bad. Like it was just absolute a steaming dumpster pile of just garbage. And I'm so glad that only a few people ever witnessed the travesty that it was. Um, and thank God for my editor and some really good beta readers to get it to a point where I was like, oh, it's a good story now. Like I'm really happy
Yeah.
with the story as a whole now.
People can read this now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not enough that I want to like crawl into a hole and just cry just for the sheer travesty that I've entered into the world and just absolutely just tortured people with. I'm like, no, there's a process now. Like book 3 is definitely going to be definitely much more organized in terms of the planning. Like my whiteboard at the moment has part 2 or act 2 detailed out, and I'm really excited to write act 2 because there's certain reunions that haven't occurred yet in the series that may or may not be occurring in this act.
Oh, that's cool.
Which, when you read the series, you'll know on a few reunions. That is all the spoilers I'm giving for that. So there's some really big moments in each of the acts, and I'm super excited with book 2. And book 3 is just it might traumatize some people, but we're here for a painful time.
Yeah. Well, if they complain, right, at least you know you did it well. So either way, right?
Well, I'm kind of waiting to see what the general response is for the ending of book 2. In terms of how much people might want to hunt me down and maybe drag me out and be like, you need to give us book 3 now. I'm like, well, you're gonna have to wait another 12 months. Maybe, or maybe a little bit longer. So
yeah.
I'm sorry in advance to those who read book 2. It doesn't end on a lot happens. A lot happens in that final act, and there's just enjoy.
Not really a cliffhanger, more like a cliff looking over, right? Like that's what my friend just said about book 2.
You might need therapy afterwards. You might not. We'll see how you go.
Don't worry, guys. She'll be providing coupons for therapy. We just talked about that. My buddy and I, we had something happen to a character, and I was so upset. like we read 8 books in Mal's Book of the Fallen, and then this character dies. He kills every character I love. I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I'm like, I got to be done. I told him, we got to be done soon. I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I'm like, we get so into these characters, in 8 or 9 books, and then he just whacks them off all the time. I felt like it was George R.R. Martin Jr. or something like that. So I definitely understand, needing to go talk to somebody after reading a book, because I really had to after our last read. So it was very emotional for me. So still is. I can't talk about it.
I might not always kill off a character, but I will definitely traumatize them.
I will ruin their lives.
The trauma will get worse as the series goes on. Which, yeah, it's sorry in advance.
Well, you guys know nobody else apologizes, so I feel like we're ahead of the game here. So
yeah. Well, I mean, another sort of big thing. I mean, book 2's got it. Book 1 will have it once I get through the reformatting. But it does have content warnings at the start of the book. So if anyone goes into my stuff or has any concerns, like you can also check out my website. I do have like full content warnings on my website in terms of a breakdown. So if you're worried about any triggers or content stuff, like it'll be on my website. It'll be at the start of the book. I think like it's nothing too crazy. It's just a dot point list of everything on it. So it's nice and.
I feel like that's helpful for like young adult and parents. I mean, I have people ask me they ask me that all the time for content warnings for books. I hand out books like they're candy, and suggest them. So I feel like that's really smart. I'm gonna have to really think about that for the future. That's really good. I haven't seen anybody do that yet.
I've certainly seen more and more authors do it, especially in sort of fantasy or sort of those darker new adult kind of stories, because we do tend to touch on topics and explore themes that are very, very dark, very, very dark.
Yeah.
And there are definitely going to be little bits and pieces in my book that are going to be triggering for some of my readers. So I kind of just want to educate them in terms of, hey, like this is what's in the book. Like I'm not pressuring you to read my stuff, but I want you to be informed. and have some expectations going into the series. So, I mean, that's probably another big thing that I've sort of taken away from in my process of book 2 to book 1. But I'm like, okay,
Interesting.
I do write. I am writing a progressively dark series. It doesn't. Book 1's not horrendously dark, but it definitely has its moments, and then the series does progressively get darker and darker as it goes. So I was like, oh, I should probably put some warnings in this.
Yeah. Oh, that's very smart. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that. I think that's very smart. So for that last one, what is one thing you hope that happens from now until our next interview? Maybe it's next year, maybe it's 6 months from now. What's one thing that you want to happen from now until then?
I definitely hope that I've got the Quinn of Blood and Fury, and I've got book 1 and book 2 like fully formatted and sort of squared away. Would be
Fair,
nice.
fair. That's fair.
I hope that I've got the draft done for book 3. To my future self, please, if you haven't done it already, please, Lord God, get on it. And I hope that I've released
I'm gonna send this to you in about 3 months. just a slip.
Note to self: sort your shit out and finish writing. And I hope that I get my my Sapphic fantasy. I hope that gets released either the end of this year or start of next year. I hope that enters into the world, and that means that I've got three books out in the world, which is wild to start thinking about. That I'm like, oh, it's not just I have one book in the world. Like, that number is starting to grow, and I'm like, oh. So I hope I've got a few more books out by the time we talk again, or that I'm about to release more books, and that my drafting is far better than it is right now. So fingers crossed.
Man, do I know that feeling. I told my friend that I was going to ask you that question, and he goes, I'm going to ask you that question next Sunday. And he goes, then I'm going to stick you to some sort of schedule. That way I get to read X, Y, and Z from you. I'm like, okay. I said, okay, that's fair. So I think those are all very, very fair goals. And I feel that you will definitely be able to accomplish them. So I'm actually really excited for our 4th interview, particularly for the new fantasy series, but book 3 as well. Because by then I'll have read book 1 and book 2. So I can be on the edge of my seat for book 3. So that'll be really nicely timed there. So that's really awesome. And then I probably should have added that, but do you have any other news, updates, promos, current projects other than book 3 of the new fantasy series that you'd like to discuss with us?
Not at the moment. I will just say to any of the listeners here today, I am on TikTok. And I am doing lots of giveaways over the next few weeks and months.
Cool.
So if you want to get yourself a free copy, I've still got some old 1st edition copies of the Galladash Snow that do have a few typos in them that are going to be some free giveaways. I'll be doing some library drops and public mystery drops in my area. So if you are in Australia as well, maybe keep an eye out for that. But I'll be doing lots of giveaways and goodies and more exciting stuff to come with my website and my writing. So stay tuned.
Oh, that's super cool. I totally forgot about that. You'll have to tag me, and we'll have to plan some stuff, because I would love to help you out with the TikTok in particular. Yeah, I know we talked about doing that before, so that's definitely on my list. So anything I can do to help you out with that, just let me know. We could always extend it, or try and get some more entries or something like that, on my other social media and things like that. Anything like that, I'd love to help you with. So let me know, what I can do to help you out, and we'll try and, get it out there and get as many people, to go see book 1 and book 2 as possible. And we just want to remind our audience, we mentioned earlier, just make sure that, anytime you have any author, but particularly indie author, if you've had one of their products, whether it's Audible, whether, it's Kindle or paperback, please make sure you're going and reviewing those. If you, have somebody such as CM Quinn that you really love to read, the easiest way to make sure they keep, getting you more books and more products is to go and review them. So that's going to be, again, our huge push for season 2. We just want to remind people to do that. So thank you so much for coming on again. I'm so glad that we could figure it out with both of our crazy schedules. But I told my wife, I was like, I just want to do this interview. Like, I just want to see what the update was like, and ask some questions that I've been trying to ask you for a while. I've been trying to save them, not ask you on on TikTok or or Twitter or something in a message. I wanted other people to see the answer to and learn from it as well. So I was trying to save them. So I was like, I'm doing this tonight. I was like, maybe I got to go to Australia myself, but we're gonna get this interview done, either way. So I'm so glad that we could do that. I got a lot of notes myself, so just same as the last two. I went over the last two actually with a buddy of mine recently. I kept sending him when we were talking about, particularly in our second interview. So it's always a pleasure. I always get a lot out of it. But like I said, if there's anything I can do to help you out, with spreading book 2, book 1, especially news for book 3, just let me know. And per usual, I'll help you out as best I can.
Right. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, anytime you want to come on, chit chat, or digress about. I love talking to you about advertisement and TikTok or any of those things. I feel like you always have a lot to say, and I always learn a lot. So anytime you want to come on, you just let me know, my friend, and we'll get you on here. So
Right. Thank you.
perfect. Yeah, we have a good rest of the morning, and the rest of your afternoon, and I will talk to you on social media, my friend.
All right. Bye.
See you later.